Okay, good morning everyone and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful, lovely Tuesday morning as we are studying together Perashat Yitro. And of course we know Perashat Yitro is famous for where we got the Torah, where we got the Aseret HaDiberot. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai and he is there for 40 days, for 40 nights, and he comes down with the Torah. And I'd like to share with you something beautiful. The Gemara tells us, take a look, Rabotai. We know the pasuk at the end of the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu says at the end of his life, we say in Perashat Vezot HaBeracha, Torah tzivalanu Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. Moshe gave us the Torah, and it's an inheritance for Yaakov, for the Jewish people. Okay, now the Gemara, Masechet Makot, has something to say over here. So let's open up Masechet Makot at the end of page 23, Chav Gimal Amud Bet. And here is Amar Rav Hamnuna. Says Rav Hamnuna. Now we know that as Jews we have the Torah, we have the 10 Commandments, and how many mitzvot is the Torah comprised of? How many mitzvot do we have? So everyone knows we have 613 mitzvot. Taryag mitzvot. Taryag, Taf is 400, Resh is 200, Yod is 10, and Gimal is 3. So 613 mitzvot. So that's how many mitzvot we have as Jews, right? We have 613 main mitzvot, and everyone agrees to this. No one argues. No one says there's 614 or there's 612. Everybody agrees there's 613. The only argument is, which are the 613? So some rabbi will have this one, some rabbi will maybe delete and say, no, that's not one, this one is one. But everyone agrees to the number 613, and they also agree that there are 365 don'ts and 248 do's. Now the 365 don'ts we know, Darash Rav Samlai, says Rav Samlai, Masechet Makot, 613 mitzvot. We have 613 commandments. Ne'emru lo leMoshe, they were given to Moses. 365 lavin, don'ts, keminyan yemot ha'hama, corresponding to the days of the sun, the days of the year, 365 days of the year. That means all 365 days of the year we have to be careful not to violate any one of the commandments. And 248 do's, aseh keneged evarash ladam, corresponding to the 248 limbs that man has. And says Rav Hamnuna, how do you know that we have 613? Where did you get that from? Where does it say 613 in the Torah? It doesn't say it. There's no pasuk that says that we have 613 mitzvot. So where did you make that up from? Says Rav Hamnuna, you know where he got it from? From right here. Torah tzivalanu Moshe. Torah was given to us by Moshe. And says Rav Hamnuna, Torah is how much? Take the numerical value of the word Torah. Taf is 600. If you said 613, you're almost right. Okay? Taf is 600. Vav is 6, so far, Taf is 400. Okay? 400. Vav is 6, that's 406. Resh, 200, that's 606. And Hey, 5, 611. Torah was given to us by Moshe. Moshe gave us 611. But we know that the first 2 commandments were given by God Himself. Anochi velo yeh lecha mepi hagevura shemanu. The first 2 commandments were given directly by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, if you add the 2 that God gave us, plus the remainder, Torah tzivalanu Moshe, the remainder, 611 that we got from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's how we have the number 613. Now, this is a beautiful idea, but the truth is, I think we're even forced to say this. It's not just a nice Dvar Torah. Actually, if you look in the Pasuk, and let's open to the beginning of the 10 Commandments together. Take a look. Vaydaber Elohim et kol hadavarim ha'ele lemor. Chapter 20. God says the following to Moses. Here you ready? Here you ready, everyone? Here God spoke the following. Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi'med avadim. First commandment, I am God who took you out of Egypt from the house of slavery. Beautiful. Next commandment. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. No other God in front of me. Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel, you can't make a statue or any image. Lo tishtahave lahem, you can't bow down to them. Period. Okay? So, the first two commandments are written, and notice how they're written. Anochi Adonai Elohecha. What does that mean? I am God who took you out of Egypt. Who's talking here? Who's talking? I am God. Who's talking? God's talking, right? It's first person. I am God. The next commandment. Lo yelecha harim al panai. There should be no other God on my face. God's talking. Then no other image. Don't bow down to them. Ki anochi, because I am God who took you out. Who's a God of vengeance. And I do kindness, le'ohavai, for those who love me. Ushomrim mitzvotai, those who keep my. Okay, very good. Now, Rabotai, let me ask you, how should the third commandment be written? The third commandment, I'll tell you what it is. Don't use God's name in vain. So it should say, Lo tisa'et shemi lashav. Don't use my name in vain. All of a sudden, take a look at the third commandment, chapter 20, pasuk 7. Lo tisa et shem Adonai Elohecha lashav. Whoa, all of a sudden, it switches to third person. Don't use God's name in vain, because God will not forgive you. Next commandment. Remember the Sabbath. For 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day you should rest. For Hashem. Because God created heaven and the earth for 6 days. All of a sudden, the first two are singular, are first person, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The rest all of a sudden become third person. Now we're mentioning God, but we're talking about Him in third person. And this is really a proof of what we've been saying till now, that the first two commandments were given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself. Of course, what happened was the people could no longer handle it. The people couldn't tolerate hearing it, and they say, Moshe, you go up, you receive the rest. By the way, we say on Pesach the following, right? We all know Dayenu, and I think we all love Dayenus because we know that once you get to the Dayenu, it means the Haggadah is almost over. And get ready for the matzah, right? Yeah, especially when the table is filled with, Baruch Hashem, a lot of people that went to Israel for the year, and they're coming back with all of their notes that they want to share with everyone. And it feels like you spent the entire year in Israel sometimes just by going to the Seder with all of your family and relatives. And sometimes it gets very lengthy and beautiful, but lengthy. So when you get to Dayenu, which means enough, right? Sometimes we're saying enough to the people that are talking too much at the Seder. But either way, the Dayenu is a beautiful part of the Haggadah. And what does it mean? Dayenu means it would be enough. It would be enough for us to thank Hashem if all He did was X, Y, and Z. So as an example, Ilu Hotzianu Mitzrayim. If all He did was took us out of Egypt, and He did nothing else, it would be enough. If all He did was bring us to the sea, and He did nothing else, it would be enough. If all He did, right? There's a lot of different steps in the Dayenus, 15 I think to be precise. And one of the Dayenus is, Ilu kervanu lifnei har Sinai. What does that mean? Ilu kervanu lifnei, right? Ilu kervanu lifnei har Sinai. If God would have brought us just to Har Sinai, velo natan lanu et Torah, and He didn't give us the Torah, Dayenu, would be enough. We would be satisfied just with that. There'd be enough to thank Him. And everyone asks, what good would that accomplish if we were brought to Har Sinai, but we weren't given the Torah? But I believe based on what we said today, we have a beautiful answer. If all He did was bring us to Har Sinai and give us the first two commandments of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, V'lo yeh lecha acherim, if all we got were the first two, Velo natan lanu, and He didn't give us the Torah, the remainder, 611, Torah, Dayenu. That would also be worth something. If all we got were the first two. Beautiful. Now there is obviously a question here. And that is, we ask and we wonder, what was the point? Why did it have to be like that? Why did Hashem have to give us the first two? Why couldn't Moshe give us all 613? Would it not have the same weight? Are the first two commandments different in any other way than the other 611? Are they more powerful now? Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. Imagine a Jew were to say, listen, I just want to keep the first two because those are the ones that were given by Hashem. The other 611, Moshe, I'm not a fan of Moshe. I'm not down to keep the 611. Chas v'shalom. Right? We don't pay attention to such a statement. Okay? So all 613 have equal weight. So if that is the case, my friends, why did the first two have to be given specifically by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The answer actually finds expression in halacha. We know that the 613 mitzvot are constant. They're eternal. The pasuk says, Lo tosifu velo tigreu. We're not allowed to add, we're not allowed to take away. Not only are we not allowed to add, but even if a Navi were one day to come and say, you know what? Hashem came to me and said, no more tefillin. God decided no more kosher. Today, thank God, there's the FDA, there's enough regulations, the food is healthy, you can eat any food you want, the whole idea of kosher is for health, and anyways, the pig is healthy, so you can eat the pig today. Imagine a Navi were to come and say that. A Navi, a real prophet that came with miracles, what do? The Torah says you kill that Navi. We don't pay attention to the words of a Navi. If a Navi tries to undo the Torah, you know they're lying. The only problem is we have cases of our own Naviim that did such things. We know stories of a Navi that have overridden the Torah. As an example, Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was here as Avraham, and he was about to go and kill his son Yitzchak. And we don't find that Yitzchak ever argued on his father and said, Dad, I don't think you should do this. Yitzchak went along. And for good reason. A Navi told me that Hashem wants me to die. So I'm going to follow what the Navi says. But what do you mean? I thought you're not allowed to uproot a commandment. I thought a Navi can't go against the halacha. We find many times a Navi went against halacha. Another example is Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi went out and he brought a korban out of the Beit HaMikdash. That's asur. It's not allowed. How is he able to override the Torah? And we all know the answer is, this is a Gemara, and the Rambam codifies this, and the Rambam says that a Navi is allowed to override a halacha temporarily. That means if it's forever, for sure, no. That would be adding, that would be taking away. But let's say a Navi comes and one day he says, this week Shabbat is suspended. Then we listen to him. If he says, this year Yom Kippur is suspended, we listen to him. Actually, any halacha under the sun, if a Navi comes and temporarily the Navi comes to try to pause the halacha, we listen to the Navi. That's an interesting halacha to know, by the way. I don't know that it matters today because we don't have Nevi'im, unfortunately. But if a Navi were to come and put on a halacha on pause, we would listen. Just pause. Not to delete. You can't delete, but you could put it on pause. There is only one exception, Rabotai, and that is the mitzvah of, which mitzvah is the only exception? There's only one mitzvah that if a Navi came and said, don't do it, just today, just temporarily, don't do it, we wouldn't listen, even temporarily. Anyone know which mitzvah? Mitzvah of, give it a minute if anyone wants to write in. Shabbat, we would still listen to the Navi. We would break Shabbat for one day. If he told us to temporarily, we would listen. It's not Shabbat, no. It's not murder. If a Navi tells us to murder, we listen to him. Very good. Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is the only exception. If a Navi comes and says, just today, do Avodah Zarah, we wouldn't listen. And we wonder, why is there a difference between Avodah Zarah and the rest? But according to what we said today, we have a very beautiful answer. If it's true that the first two commandments were said by Hashem, that means that no Navi has the right to override them even temporarily, because they have a different level. The first two commandments, to Anochi Hashem, to believe in God. And number two, to not accept other gods. These were said Mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we asked, was there a reason they had to be said by God? And the answer is yes. Because they are, in a way, in a league of their own. Any other mitzvah that a Navi tries to tell us to override temporarily, we would listen. Not Avodah Zarah. And why? Because the first two, Avodah Zarah, was given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Beautiful. So let's just recap what we learned so far. So far we saw that there are 613 commandments. The first two were given by Hashem directly, and the last 611 were given by Moshe. That's the pasuk Torah. Tzivalanu Moshe. Moshe gave us the 611, which is the numerical value of Torah. And the proof for all of this is that the first two commandments are written in first person, as opposed to the remainder. All of a sudden they switch to third person. There is a beautiful Hatam Sofer that I would like to share with you. And the Hatam Sofer actually tells us another novelty of here. Rabotai, I want to show you a deeper level. We know that there are 613 mitzvot, right? There's 613 commandments. But these are from the Torah. We know that as part of our law, our day-to-day life, we also have mitzvot derabanan. Okay? Actually, I'm going to have everyone, if you like, just write in the chat on the side, mitzvot derabanans that we have today. Okay, give it a few seconds. Go ahead, feel free if you like to add any mitzvot derabanans that we have today. Which mitzvot do we keep today that are from the rabbis? We have many, right? But really, in the core, we have 7 mitzvot. Okay, 7 mitzvot derabanan. Sheva mitzvot. Let's go through them. Okay. Here we go. Number 1, avelut. Okay, the laws of mourning. The laws of mourning are midirabanan. Next, of course, there are elements of mourning that are mideoraita, but again, mainly the laws of avelut midirabanan. Number 2, lesameya hatan vekala. To dance for hatan and kala, the 7 days of Sheva Brachot, those were added by actually Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, next, netilat yadayim, before having bread, that was added by Shlomo HaMelech. So that's also a beautiful mitzvah midirabanan. Next are the laws of brachot. Before eating bread, you say a bracha, right? Except for Birkat HaMazon, very good. All the brachot, except for Birkat HaMazon, that we say bracha before eating them, is midirabanan. The rabbis added them. Also, we have the laws of not allowing goyim to cook for us. Not eating bread of a non-Jew, right? These are also midirabanan. There are also certain reshuyot. There are certain laws that the rabbis added on Shabbat where we cannot walk. There's domains that are unapproachable. Even though mideoraita, I'm allowed to walk there, I'm allowed to carry there, but there are reshuyot, there are areas that the rabbis regarded forbidden to carry in on Shabbat. Beautiful. Chanukah is one of them. And finally, Purim. Okay? Chanukah and Purim. These are all midirabanan. We know Purim. And by the way, how come Purim we're allowed to drive? We're allowed to use our phones. Why didn't the rabbis make Purim like the holidays from the Torah? Why all of a sudden Purim, it's a holiday, but it's not really a holiday. It's like a sketch holiday. If the rabbis are adding it, so do it correctly. Add a day properly. The reason is because actually the rabbis here have to be very careful when adding a halacha, when adding a mitzvah. Aren't they in violation of lo tosifu? Aren't the rabbis violating right now by adding 7 more? They're violating, you're not allowed to add? How are they allowed to add right here? What's the answer? The answer is they're allowed to add because they're making sure that they're creating a difference between the ones that they're adding and the ones from the Torah. Okay? As long as there's a small difference, then they're not adding. And the difference here by Hanukkah and Purim at least is that they're not limiting it to the same way that you're not allowed to keep Pesach, that you're limited on the holidays. They let you touch electricity. They let you light a fire. And therefore, that itself is enough of a differentiation to distinguish between what the rabbis added and what the Torah is adding. But says the Hatam Sofer, something remarkable. Rabotai, you're not going to believe this. So if it's true that we have 613 from the Torah and 7 more from the rabbis, altogether, that's 620. Says the Hatam Sofer, this is all hinted already in the 10 Commandments, like we said. The 10 Commandments, we already mentioned the first 2 are given by God. The last 8 were given by Moshe. Really all 611 by Moshe. But says the Hatam Sofer, if you count the 10 Commandments from the opening word Anochi to the closing words Asher Lere'echa, you have altogether 620 letters. Remarkable. So the whole Torah is hinted in its entirety within the 620 letters of the Torah. And each letter corresponds to another mitzvah. Now, I'm not going to go through all the letters with you. Okay? I'm not going to count either. I trust him. If you like afterwards, you could count and let me know if it's 620. I think there should be. But the Hatam Sofer says something beautiful. If each word corresponds to another mitzvah, and there's 620, each letter is another mitzvah, and there's 620 letters, so it makes sense that the last 7 letters should correspond to the 7 mitzvot derabanan that the rabbis added. Now you take a look and tell me, what are the last 7 letters of the Aseret HaDiberot? Let's go all the way to the end of the 10 Commandments, and we have the Pasuk, chapter 20, Pasuk 14. Lo tahmod, don't covet. Lo tahmod eshet re'echa, ve'avdo, ve'hamoto, ve'shoro, v'hamoro. And take a look, here we go, you ready? Ve'chol asher le're'echa. Says the Hatam Sofer, the last 7 letters are the words asher le're'echa, that belong to your fellow. Because the last 7 mitzvot are not from Hashem. The last 7 mitzvot belong to our fellow rabbis. They're asher le're'echa. They're midrabanan. They come from our friends, from our rabbis. Not only that, but says the Hatam Sofer, a masterpiece of here. He says the last 7 letters, asher le're'echa, actually remind us what those 7 mitzvot are. And he says we take the first letter of each one, and we have a beautiful acronym. Asher Aleph stands for the word Avelut. Avelut, we know, is one of the 7 that the rabbis added. Shin, Simhat Hatan Vekala. That's the laws of 7 days of celebrating for the Hatan and Kala. Resh, what's Resh? Rechitza, washing your hands before eating bread. Then we have the Lamed Lere'echa. That's Lehem is Lehem. Lamed is Lehem. That's the laws of bread and the Brachot that we say before eating foods. Resh is the Reshuyot, are the different domains that we have on Shabbat. Ayin, Amalek, that's the holiday of Purim. And Chaf, Lere'echa, Chaf is Kohanim, corresponding to the holiday of Hanukkah. Okay? So you have an amazing insight here of the Hatam Sofer, really breaking down in so many different layers the 10 Commandments, the 2 and the 611, and then even the letters, the 620 letters corresponding to the Rabbanans. So really a beautiful idea from the Hatam Sofer. I just want to close. We're all heading into winter vacation now, and I think it's very interesting. At least, I don't know for the South Americans, but for the North Americans, for people on the upper half of the equator, this is where we all go away this time of the year. And I find it fascinating that we end up away in Perashat Yitro. Usually people are traveling this time of the year, the Perashah where the Torah is given. Now we know that every holiday has an exact date. Pesach, Tetvav Nisan. Sukkot, Tetvav Tishri. Rosh Hashanah, the 1st of Tishri, Yom Kippur. Every holiday has an exact date of when we have to keep it. Even the Rabbanan, Chanukah and Purim. We know exactly when to keep every holiday. There's only one holiday that doesn't have a date. The Torah gives no date for this holiday, and that is the holiday of Shavuot, the holiday of the giving of the Torah. Matter of fact, how do we know when when Shavuot is to be celebrated? Count 49 days from Pesach, and now you know when is Shavuot. But even in the Torah itself, it's a mahloket in the Torah when we got the Torah. There's two opinions in the Gemara when we got it. We don't even know the date. One rabbi says the 6th of Sivan, one rabbi says the 7th of Sivan. And I always found it interesting that every holiday has a date except for the Torah. Isn't it ironic that the most important holiday, the holiday of the giving of the Torah, we don't even know when it was given. But maybe the Torah is trying to tell us something so powerful over here. And that is that the Torah is not limited to a date in the calendar. There is no day in the year that we need to be Jewish, or there is no day in the year that may be the opposite. We're allowed to not be Jewish. There's no such thing as dates that are blackout dates. Here we don't have to keep the halacha. Here we don't have to worry about what the Torah says, whether it's on a time of the year or a place in the world. Maybe the Torah is trying to teach us that wherever we are, whenever we are, we have to keep the Torah, we have to keep the commandments. A lot of times we have laws that we're comfortable keeping. We have our standard. This is what I do, and I keep X amount of kosher, and I keep X amount of Shabbat, and I keep X amount of whatever it is. But sometimes we go away in vacation, we go away on certain times of the year, and we let our guard down. And all of a sudden, we're strict on prayer, and then we don't pray. We're strict on tefillin, we don't put tefillin. We're strict on Shabbat, we don't maybe keep Shabbat so well. We're strict on kosher, and then we're a little bit lenient and lax in how much kosher we keep. And maybe God is trying to tell us, by not giving us a date, is that whatever we are ready to keep, whatever level we're on, and everyone's on a different level, and we're all growing beautifully. We're all doing the best that we can. And not everyone needs to be on the same level. Some of us were born on a lower level than others. And that's okay. We're growing and we're doing our best. But maybe the Torah doesn't give us a date, and the Torah is trying to tell us by that. Whatever your level is, do it and stick to it and stay consistent. Don't let that level drop just because the time of the year came that now you go away to a different place. Now, between January 20th and 27th, here we let our guard down. Here we don't have to keep. We're on vacation. Don't forget the Torah was given in a place that we don't even know today where it is. It's in a desert somewhere. Anyone know where it is? We know exactly where the Beit HaMikdash is. We know where David HaMelech is buried. We know everything. We know everything under the sun. We know where it is. Torah, where it was given, we don't know. The most important event in history. We don't know where it was given. Not only do we know where it was given, we don't know when it was given. We don't know the date. It's a mahloket, 6 or 7. But the Torah is telling us, because the Torah is not tied down to a place. The Torah is not tied down to a date. We must keep it 24/7, 7 continents. Wherever we are going to be vacationing, wherever we go, to take the Torah with us, to take the tefillin with us. The Torah doesn't actually write the word tefillin. For the word tefillin, anyone know how it's written in the Torah? The Torah uses the word totafot. Now that's a very weird word, and I don't think you ever use that word in your life in a sentence, totafot. Okay, the Torah uses it, we use tefillin. What is totafot? Totafot is actually a combination of 2 words in 2 different languages. Rashi says tot is the number 2 in some random language, Kaspi, whatever it is. And fot is also 2 in a different language, in African. And fot is 2 and 2, and Ethiopian, yeah. And totafot, 2 and 2 is 4, because there's 4 sections in the tefillin. Because there's 4 perashiot, 4 parchments in the tefillin. Therefore, corresponding to the 4 parts of the tefillin, we call it totafot, which is no different than saying dos 2. Dos 2. Dos, right? Dos sekis, all right? Dos 2. Imagine we called it dos 2. Dos 2, totafot. Interesting. Maybe, by the way, that's where dos comes from. Tot. Okay. Sounds the same. 2. Why are you writing it like that? Why are you picking 2 different languages from 2 random countries to tell me totafot, to tell me tefillin? And I heard from my rabbi, Hacham Yaakov ben Hayim, who quoted his father, Hacham Baruch ben Hayim alav shalom. And he said Because Torah is telling us wherever you are in the world, take your tefillin with you. Whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Ethiopia, whether you're going to Aruba, whether you're going to Cancun, you're going to Turks, wherever you're going, Alaska, cruise, anywhere. Don't forget, the Torah has to be kept wherever we go. Wherever we go, we want Hashem to be there protecting us, right? So there's no such thing as a vacation from God, no matter if it's a place, no matter if it's a time. And that's why the Torah is not given on a specific date per se. Because the Torah is something that we take with us everywhere and every day of our lives. You know, there is one more thought that I want to add over here. The Torah says, right before offering the Torah to us, let's go back to Devarim for a minute. And the Pasuk says, Adonai Sinai ba. God came from Sinai. Vezarach Seir lamu. What does that mean? Okay, let's open it up over here. Everyone please open up Perashat Vezot HaBeracha. Okay? This is the blessing that Moshe gave at the end of his life. And he says right in the beginning, God came from Sinai, he shone from Seir, he appeared from Paran, he's coming from Ribebot Kodesh. Okay, so that's a lot of locations. And there's so much commentary on these psukim, Rabotai. Hundreds, literally hundreds. And let's just see what Rashi has to say. Rashi says, Zarach Meseir, Patach Libnei Esav. He came first before offering us the Torah. God actually went to Esav. Okay? And he said, do you want the Torah? Sheikablu Torah. The Lord didn't want it. Hofia Mehar Paran. He went to Ishmael. Do you want the Torah? They didn't want it. He went to Moab. He went to all the nations. Okay? And God offered every one of them the Torah, and they said no. But the Gemara tells us why they said no. The Gemara says a little bit more flavor. First, he came to Esav. He says, you want the Torah? Esav said, what's in it? And God said, well, what's in it is, he told him the commandments, and then he got up to, you can't kill. And Esav says, whoa, time out, you can't kill. You know what you wrote about me? In the Torah, you said that he is a murderer, right? He's going to have the sword. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. So I'm a murderer. What do you mean don't kill? That's who I am. You testified about me that I'm a murderer. Sorry, can't accept it. Okay. Then God moved on to Ishmael. What does it say? You can't steal. Ishmael said, what do you mean you can't steal? That's who I am. That's what you wrote about me, God. Yado bakol. I'm my hands in everything. Not accepting. Thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. Okay, you went then to Moab. What do you want? I'm immorality. Can't do immorality. Moab says, what? Immorality? Immorality is my middle name. How do you think I was born? My father slept with his daughter, right? Lot and his daughters. I'm born through incest. Of course, I'm a immoral guy. What do you mean? Not accepting it. Thanks, but no thanks. And finally, after everyone said no, Hashem came. Ve'ata, he came to the Jewish people. Okay. And the joke continues that when he came to the Jews, he asked them, do you want the Torah? The Jews said, how much is it? And God says, it's free. He said, all right, we'll take 2. Right? Okay. So the Jewish people, Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah. But the truth is, if you think about it, it's a little bit, first of all, the lesson is beautiful. What's the lesson? Anyone know what's the lesson? Give it a couple of seconds. What's the lesson that we learn? Feel free to add your input. What's the lesson that we learn from this midrash? Here is Esav, and Esav is ready to accept 612 mitzvot. He's ready to do all of them, just not one. Killing is not my thing. It's not my cup of tea. I can't not kill. I'm a murderer. I'll keep 612. What did God say? It's not for you. Ishmael, I'll keep 612. All of them except for one. I'm just going to not do one. Not for you. Edom, Moab, I'll do all of them. Not one. God says, no such thing, like we say, as a half kosher lunch. You can't be half Jewish. You're either in or you're out. You're in, you got to follow every single law. You got to follow Torah. Torah is a recipe. Sometimes you read a recipe and you got to do all of these steps. Sometimes we read the steps and we say, I don't know if I'm not a fan of sugar. You leave out sugar, what's going to happen to the recipe if you leave out one of the ingredients? It's not going to come out good. You can't keep half of the Torah. The Torah is a recipe. There's a beautiful mashal I once heard about a lady that had guests over, her in-laws. She had to impress them. So she goes to her neighbor. She asks her neighbor for her famous recipe for cake. This very amazing cake that she makes. Her neighbor says, no problem. She texts her the recipe. She goes home. She makes the cake. It comes out of the oven. It's all watery. It's disgusting. It looks horrible. She's serving it. The lady's she's so nervous. She says, everyone swears by the cake. It must be good. She's serving it. She sees her in-laws tasting it, and they're gagging, and they're throwing it up, and the lady's mortified. She runs to the kitchen. She takes a taste herself. She's disgusted from the cake as well. She runs to her neighbor. She's knocking on the door. The neighbor opens up. She says, yeah, what's going on? She says, you so disgusting. You sketched me. How could you do that? You gave me the wrong recipe. She says, what are you talking about? I gave you the right recipe. I texted you exactly how it is. Let me check. Maybe I gave you... She looks at the text. She says, no, this is the right recipe. Did you follow the recipe? And the lady goes, did I follow the recipe? No. And thank God. I only followed half and it came out this bad. Imagine I followed the whole thing, how bad it would come out. The lady starts laughing. You fool. The recipe is meant to be followed from A to Z. You can't follow half of a recipe. You can't follow 9/10 of a recipe. This is the equation. So too, a person in life has to know that sometimes we're not feeling the beauty of the Torah. Sometimes we're not enjoying the Torah that we're keeping. Maybe part of it is because we're following half a recipe. Of course, we can't jump. Of course, we got to do and build it slowly. But we have to remember what God says to Esav. It's 6:13. You can't be 99.999% observant. Of course, if you're not ready for it yet, if we're growing, that's great. But at least we have to realize that I need to get there one day. If I'm not ready yet, that's fine. If I'm not holding yet to keep this halakha, it's okay, beautiful. So don't go there yet. You're not ready. But it has to be on our back burner, as they say. It's got to be somewhere, somehow in our minds, we have to be knowing that I got to get there. I can't remain my whole life content on being a 612 Jew. Ultimately, that is the message that God tells Esav. If you're going to keep every single one except for one, then the Torah is not for you. No such thing as bargaining. You can't bargain when it comes to Mitzvot. This is a package. You're either all in or you're all out. We need to keep every single part of the Torah. I just want to close with one. I know I keep saying that today. I just want to close with one more question on this. If you think about it, in a way, it's not fair. It's not fair. God's offering Esav the Torah, and Esav says, listen, I would love to keep it. I can't. It's just not who I am. You created me in my nature to be a murderer. That's who I am. What do you want from me? It's in my genes. It's in my blood to be like this. Ishmael says, I am a thief. That's who I am. I am a immoral person. I was born with these drives. So, what do you want from Esav? Is it fair that you're holding them accountable for not accepting the Torah? But you created them with already internal flaws that they're not compatible with it? To answer this question, we have to just go one final time back to the beginning of the Ten Commandments. What does Hashem say? Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am God who took you out of Egypt. Now the commentaries ask, why does it say asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim? Why not say Anochi, I am God, asher bara et haolam. I am God who created the world. Why does God identify, and the first time He's introducing Himself to us, Hi, I'm God. Nice to meet you. And how does he introduce himself to us? Hi, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. Wouldn't it be more impressive if God said, hi, I'm the God that created this entire universe. I created this whole thing that you're looking at. This is my house, right? That would be much more impressive. Why does Hashem limit his greatness and say, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt? It sounds like it's a much smaller accomplishment than God who created the world. There are two thoughts on this. Number one, very famous idea, and that is that the Jewish people witnessed Yetziat Mitzrayim. Although maybe the creation of the world would be a greater achievement, but the Jewish people would have no way of ascertaining or verifying that. It's only because God said, I'm the God who took you out of Egypt, and that they testified to. That we admit, that we saw, that we could put our stamp on. And therefore Hashem used that as his introduction. But I want to share with you one amazing idea, and that is the word Mitzrayim, our rabbis tell us, is what? Not only a place geographically in the world. Mitzrayim also comes from the word Metzar. Mitzrayim means our boundaries, our limitations. Min ha-metzar karatia. I call out to God from my place of confinement. Misraim, we all have a Misraim. We are all in an Egypt. Somewhere in our minds, we all have things that we're scared, that we feel like we can't do. We all have habits that we feel that we can't break. We all have drives that we think we're impulsive and we're obligated to give into. We all have areas of life that we feel, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I act, these are my thoughts, this is my personality. I can't change. I can't change. Don't ask me to change. This is who I've been. This is what I do for the last 60 years of my life. You're not going to change me. Right? And sometimes we have Mitzrayim, we have Mitzarim that we lock ourselves into. And the first sentence that God says to us, I am the God who took you out of Mitzrayim. And just like he took us out back then, till today, by accepting the Torah, we are able, through the Torah, to overcome our drives. And that's the magic. That's the beauty. That's the power of the Torah. When we accept it, when we follow it, when we live by it, we are no longer obligated to give in to our drives. Many people think that by following the Torah, you become a slave. Oh, look at all these Jews. You're such a slave. Look, you're so locked. You're so tied in. You have no freedom. Everywhere you go, you got to take extra luggage of food. You got to take your plata for Shabbat. Look at you. You're locked in every 7 days. You can't drive. What kind of freedom is that? Why is God trying to limit you guys? And a lot of times we grow up, we hear people around us, and they talk like that. And they say things like, oh, you're so limited in your freedom. You're limited in your capabilities. You're limited in your capacity. Break free. The sky's the limit. Do whatever you want. One time a guy said to me, Rabbi, I don't know, I follow Torah. I want to do what I want, when I want. And the answer is that it's the exact opposite. When a person lives not with the Torah, when a person gives into every single one of their instincts and drives, they are slaves. You know, an animal doesn't have free choice. An animal doesn't have the ability to say, you know, I don't want to bark because I'm going to wake up somebody. You know, I'm not going to take that piece of meat. It belongs to another animal. Now, sometimes an animal won't take food because they're afraid of other animals. But they never have that rational calculation. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to steal. An animal is hungry, it takes. It does. We all have an animalistic soul. And when a person has a thought, when a person has a drive, when a person is tempted to do something that's forbidden, to smoke, to eat, to steal, to curse, and a person just lives their life just giving in to their animalistic desires and drives and soul, they are a slave to their temptations. That's a true eved. That's a slavery. That person is not in control. If a person took all of their wealth and threw it into their ocean, you're right, they're free to do that, but you would call that person insane. A person that just does whatever comes to their head, that's not freedom. Freedom is when I can do something and I control myself not to. Freedom, that's real power. When I don't follow my drives, when I don't follow my instincts, and when we accepted the Torah, the magic that the Torah has is it affords us that ability to overcome our most basic instincts and drives. And what God was trying to tell Yishmael is, yes, of course you are a murderer. But if you accept the Torah is going to help you not to be one anymore. Yes, Yishmael, you do steal. You are a thief. By nature, that's who you are. And that's why I'm trying to give you the Torah, so that you can overcome your nature. That's the magic. This is the Mitzrayim. So we all have to ask ourselves, what are our limitations? What are our Mitzarim? And how can we use the Torah to guide us, lehorot, to light up the way before us, to help us overcome all of our drives, all of our instincts, to become more patient, to become more understanding, to become more giving, to become less selfish, to not always be egocentric and thinking about ourselves and self-centered. This is what the Torah does. Look at the Jewish people in the world. Look at the ones that have Torah, God bless. The ones that follow. We're so lucky we have this guiding us. Sometimes you see a kid goes to Israel, girl goes to seminary, go to yeshiva, they come back, they're more respectful, they're more refined. All of a sudden, this kid who was angry is so calm. This person who was so self-centered is so understanding, is so forgiving, right? This is the energy. This is the beauty of the Torah. So next time, first of all, this is something that we have to thank Hashem for every day. When we say Asher Bachar Banu, thank you Hashem for choosing us. Thank you Hashem for giving us this gift of the Torah that is able to help me transform into a better person and to make me a true free person, a true free man. En lecha ben horin ela mi she'osek b'Torah. A truly free person is someone who has the Torah, helping them overcome, and that is true freedom. May Hashem bless us all to internalize all of these amazing, amazing ideas of the 10 Commandments, to be able to remember that we have 613, and that 613 is not 612. You can't be kind of Jewish. We have all of them, and part of them is even the extra 7, the 620, the Rabbanans, remembering what the Hatam Sofer told us, and also remembering wherever we are, whenever we are, we have this Torah guiding us and giving us direction. Stop over here, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Wherever you end up going for vacation, I hope you all enjoy your breaks, enjoy your families. You all earned it and deserved it. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.